Hi, my name is Hiwot. I am a pharmacist and cosmetic formulator. I explain the science of skincare products here on this channel. If this sounds interesting to you, keep on watching and don't forget to subscribe. With all the esterification, mixing, and derivatives that are out there in the personal care industry, I want to reassure you that you're not the only one confused by the ingredient names in your products. So when I went to school of pharmacy, we did organic chemistry, analytical chemistry, physical chemistry, medicinal chemistry, just a lot of chemistry. And biochemistry too. Seriously though, I only learned about the IUPAC system of naming chemicals. You know, I was trying to make sense of ingredients in my shampoos and skincare products using IUPAC, but it seemed like I didn't know any chemistry, for a lack of a better way to put it. The ingredients sort of sound like chemicals that I worked with, but not quite. It was annoying. That's when I discovered the personal care industry doesn't actually use IUPAC, International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry. What a relief it was. One of my friends thinks the cosmetic industry is pseudoscience. To her credit, she's a regulatory scientist who works on life-saving drugs, so I will give her a pass. I think we can all give her a pass. It's not that the personal care industry is pseudoscience, but we use what's called INCI, INCI, short for International Nomenclature of Cosmetic Ingredients. Also, the reason you see some common names when it comes to extracts or waxes is because by the time they came up with INCI dictionary, there were many ingredients that had established common names. I guess they didn't want to reinvent the wheel where it's not needed. Now that I have reassured you there is nothing wrong with your chemistry knowledge, let's see how to read List of Ingredients, aka LOI. In all the countries where there are strong institutions for regulations such as the US, Canada, Australia, European Union countries, etc., the ingredients need to appear in descending order, calculated by either mass or volume. So we can be sure that ingredients are not randomly listed, at least until 1% concentration. Ingredients in concentrations of less than 1% can be listed in any order, with the exception of color ingredients, which are supposed to be listed last. Knowing how to read INCI list helps in making an informed purchase. You won't be buying products because the packaging is gorgeous or because it smells nice. When I was at Emirates, we would go shopping with different crew, and for some reason the first thing most people did was put the sample on the back of their hand, rub it, and smell it, as if we're buying perfume. It was confusing, So first, if a product contains OTC drug, it will show in a separate box the active ingredients, along with concentration, percentage, and intended function in that formulation. Then you'll find the list of non-active ingredients in a different box, following the same rule we mentioned, in descending order. Generally, the first ingredient is typically water unless it's anhydrous formulation. Some companies could use herbal distillate, aka floral waters, instead of just plain water. This is the kind of stuff you typically see with premium brands though, because it ain't cheap. I talk about different formulations and what to expect in typical products based on the formulation type in this video. Make sure to check it out if you're interested to know more about, what goes into products. But in general, there are ingredients added to solve some sort of problem. There are ingredients added to help the first group of ingredients perform. There are ingredients that help dissolve lipophilic and hydrophilic ingredients. There are ingredients that help with consistency, aka viscosity, or color, or pH, and of course preservatives, and so much more. If you're not a skincare enthusiast or in the industry, the function of ingredients could be confusing. One place where I suggest rookies use is INCI Decoder. It's got basic information. It's not always up to date or accurate, but surely not a bad place to get started. If you're in the industry, I would highly recommend joining SCC, Society of Cosmetic Chemists. You get connected with other professionals, participate in events, and get journals which let you know the up-and-coming ingredients and advances in the industry. It's really empowering. I know that they have criteria to join, like you need to be a chemist and have a background in health science or something related, which I appreciate, by the way, because it filters the members, so you're paying for an affiliation that's truly science-based and forward-looking. I mean, you want to run into chemical-free formulators, so, that's a great platform where you can browse archives as well and have access to real information. I am a strong believer activity is the best way to learn, so let's look at a product together. I wanted us to look at this, but it looks like the ingredient list is on the box, which I don't keep. Let's see if we can find it online. I guess they no longer carry this line, so let's just go right ahead and do Estee Lauder's Micro Essence Skin Activating Treatment Lotion. It will give us an opportunity to look at the ingredients online together anyway. Don't you just love the packaging? I'm always envious of the packaging Estee Lauder and Dior use. Exquisite. So first we find water, which needs no explanation. Then Bifida Ferment Lysate, which is a probiotic which Estee Lauder has used in other products such as the popular Advanced Night Repair for a very long time. It's supposed to help reversing UV damage. Polyethylene glycol, PEG 75, gives the formulation aesthetic appeal, like the feel of it, and also helps solubilize other ingredients. Pentylene glycol, propanediol, and butylene glycol in general have the same role. They're used as humectant, solvent, and emollient. Typically, butylene glycol is used within the range of 1 to 10, so we can tell the concentration of ingredients is going down. Betaine, aka trimethylglycine, is an ingredient that can easily form hydrogen bonds with water and other molecules, helping solubilize some other ingredients. This can be used at about 4% maximum concentration, so we know that we're definitely going down in concentration again. Lactobacillus ferment is kelp extract that has been derived from fermentation of sea kelp using lactobacillus, the same bacteria that produces yogurt, sour cream, and other foods. This is a great moisturizer too. Go, Estee Lauder. Acetyl hexapeptide 8, an amino acid which acts as a messenger of cutaneous restructuring and repair, so it can restore and maintain the skin's youthful appearance. I'm loving everything so far. Acetyl glucosamine. This is considered to be a skin identical ingredient, meaning it's found in our skin in the space between the cells, and it's used to maintain skin's barrier abilities and reduce dryness. Studies have shown that it can increase collagen production, increase moisture content of the skin, increase elasticity of the skin, exfoliation, and also the speed of wound healing. So it's a great ingredient. I'm loving everything here. So to keep it short, let's go down to the last ingredient, phenoxyethanol. Now, phenoxyethanol is a preservative used in personal care products. It's a strong preservative against gram-negative bacteria. When reading INCI list, we mention everything needs to be listed in descending concentration level until 1%, right? Well, phenoxyethanol is one of those ingredients that's used below 1%, so when you see it, you can be sure you've reached or passed that 1% concentration. As you can see in this formulation, they have used potassium sorbate, which is another preservative that's good against mold and yeast. In fact, I just remember potassium sorbate can only be used up to 0.5%, which makes the phenoxyethanol 1% rule a moot point. I hope I'm making sense. I said I wasn't going to go through every ingredient, but I think we should. In general, when you see preservative ingredients such as phenoxyethanol, carbyl glycol, aka 1,2-octanediol, potassium sorbate, hexylene glycol, 1,2-hexanediol, you know you're in that 1% range. Also, pH adjusters such as citric acid or sodium citrate here are used below 1%. The point is, phenoxyethanol 1% rule doesn't always hold true. Yeah, it does simplify it, but doesn't capture all the facts. Like I said, whey formulators could work with multiple preservatives or natural antioxidants that work synergetically. So saying phenoxyethanol doesn't necessarily tell you it's 1%. You could be looking at as low as 0.25% of phenoxyethanol. Okay friends, I think this is enough, and I have to admit, we found out that this is a pretty darn good product. I've never used it, but now that I have looked at the ingredients, I might very well try it. Next in our labeling comes colors. You see them listed as the color followed by a number, green number 3 or something like that. In the EU, they have CI number or chemical index, so you would see something like CI 42053. What am I missing? Some formulations, especially those that use botanical extracts, could have natural scent. But if you add extra fragrance, you would list as fragrance. you're not required to identify exactly what you've used or, what you've mixed to give it a certain fragrance. While we're on fragrance, I would like to ask you, did you know unscented label doesn't mean it's fragrance free? If a product says unscented, it simply means the product doesn't have an aroma. That's not necessarily because all the ingredients are scent free, but because a fragrance might have been added to mask the natural smell of ingredients, making the final product unscented. Pretty confusing, isn't it? Next, I think I forgot to talk about botanicals. What a shame. I'm all about botanicals. Give me plants anytime, any day. Blame my pharmacy school for the obsession. So you usually see the Latin name of botanical extracts. Like in this lotion we were looking at, you can see there is Antimus nobilis or chamomile extract. So these are the easiest to recognize. I hope you found this video helpful. I also hope I have shown you why the 1% phenoxyethanol rule isn't the most effective way to go about analyzing formulations. Also, I forgot to mention this, but the fact something is less than 1% doesn't make it ineffective. Like when you're cooking, you put a pinch of salt, right? If you were to measure it, I don't know if it would come to be a 0.1%, but it serves the purpose, right? Same is true in formulations. You don't need a whole lot of everything. Take carbomer in this formulation. It's probably less than 0.5, but surely thickens formulations to the desired viscosity, even when used as low as 0.1. That's just the chemistry of things. Take care, my friend. I'll catch you next time.